Good morning. How are you all doing? Thank you so much for listening live. If you're with us, I've had a bucket load of coffee today to try and get me up and awake for 10 a.m. I know it probably shouldn't be that bad to be awake by this time, but it does take me quite a lot. Today I'm really joined by someone incredibly exciting, which I cannot wait for. Someone who I've actually been meaning to actually meet and have a good chat with for a long time, but we keep sort of half passing and missing each other. I think also a great example of how someone who's got going during this time period as well and really found what new ways to develop from being a freelancer and all the different challenges that come with it during this time. So good morning, Eira. How are you doing?
Hey, great to see you. And as you say, it only took a pandemic for us to finally meet up. So
Exactly. 2 years and a pandemic. Mine's even on brand. I've gone for Yorkshire, Tour de Yorkshire as well. So I always think it's fascinating when we start these chats, partly to save me actually doing an introduction properly, but also as a great way of finding out how you define yourself. So who are you and what do you do in the world?
Very good question for now, isn't it? Who am I? So I'm a musician who plays the harp. I'm based near Manchester. And I think my working life is divided into maybe three separate strands. So as a performer, I freelance with many of the main orchestras in the Northwest, from Liverpool Phil to Opera North, BBC, etc. For the last 20 more years, I've been a regular guest with the Halle Orchestra, so I do lots of their main concerts, and really enjoy that. And that's what I miss most about this time, being actually part of that orchestral sound. So I also do a lot of chamber music. I have a flute and harp duo with the Greek flautist Anna Rosa Mari, and we're called the Juniper Project. I was due to premiere a new work for violin and harp with Andy Long next month, written by Kevin Malone, so sadly that won't happen. And I do also recording projects. I think the last one I did was with Lawrence Perkins, the bassoonist, and the Carducci String Quartet. So that's a variety of performing that I do. And then, of course, my second strand is as a teacher. I've been teaching for as long as I've been playing. It's always been an incredibly important part of my life. And sometimes that means weeks are very busy trying to fit in the teaching with the performing. But I teach at the Royal Northern College of Music. I direct all the harp events there, but I'm not salaried. I'm completely self-employed and just have my hours. So I also teach at the Junior RNCM on Saturday mornings. I direct RNCM Young Harps. And this is a wonderful project where young harpists under the age of 18 come together twice a term to just play ensembles, work with visiting tutors, and it's all free for them. And I just absolutely love doing those outreach projects. So then, as if that wasn't enough, I have a third strand, which is my own creative endeavours, really. I call it ELJ projects. And I've always done this because when I started out as a musician, I was very aware that things could change at any moment. So you could say I've been preparing for this pandemic for a long time because I wanted to have something that was special to me, that I could be in control of. And also, when I started teaching at the RNCM, I suddenly got the label of being a teacher who worked with advanced conservatoire level students. And that's not why I teach. I like teaching anybody and everybody who has a passion for the harp. So I started doing workshops for mixed ability groups, for harp groups, adults, and I now get invitations to go all over the world, really, and doing my workshops. One of the highlights of last year was going to South Africa for 3 weeks and working with some absolutely beautiful people over there, harps of all ages, and we all came together to do things. And then I finally developed my website, having followed some of your blogs, I have to say. If people haven't followed your blogs, we're very grateful for you for everything you put out there to help musicians. And I definitely did read what you put out there. So yes, I finally developed my website, and you can buy my books on there. I write booklets for young harpists, warm-up exercises, arrange music for flute and harp, and write my own tunes. So that's kind of what I was up to until March 15th, 2020.
Incredible. For a start, it's amazing you managed to fit all of that into just one career as well, which is something truly spectacular. I've no idea like where you find time for sleep in all of that. But as you say, things all of a sudden change around March 15th when lockdown really kicks in. And obviously, with having so many different things and so many different hats, it must then be quite a challenge having to fix all those different issues that come up for each different strand. So normally, say for example, if you just had one role and one task, although it's a bigger thing to then try and fix in effect, you've only got one role or one problem to try and face, where you must have had so many different mini fires to try and put out with lockdown starting.
Yes, I think those first few weeks were horrendous, to be honest. There was the shock. Although you knew it was coming, when it actually started happening, there was an awful lot to do. And yet there was nothing to do. It was very strange. It was just responding to everything that was happening, but realizing that a lot of preparation I'd been doing at the beginning of this year had now gone. So I had to take a few weeks away from everything, which I couldn't understand at the time because I'm such a proactive person. So I didn't go online very much at all. I didn't produce content or even tweet very much. I just took a step back and had a pause and thought, what am I going to do? And I didn't have an answer for quite a long time. But I'm glad now that I did take a bit of time out. And I highly recommend that to anybody. It gave me time to let go of everything that had been going on for years. I had a rest. I sat in the garden and I listened to the birds. I can't tell you how much of a salvation that was. And so my mind cleared and my ears opened to something completely different. And that was really healthy for my mental state.
Certainly.
And then, sorry. Yeah.
No, sorry. Keep going.
And then I thought, I quite like this. I quite like not doing very much after all this time. So I was hauled back into reality, really, when I got a request from the Edinburgh International Harp Festival. I was supposed to be going there in April to do 2 courses, a masterclass, lessons, a concert. And I'd been there last year and had a fantastic time. Was thrilled they invited me back 2 years running. I was really excited about it. Obviously, the cancel was the course, the festival was postponed. But they asked if I would be part of the virtual festival, which was to put on a video tutorial. Now, up until this time, my worst nightmare was doing face-to-face online or recording things. I wasn't comfortable with it. I had been asked to do Skype lessons, Zoom and everything. I'd always said no, I didn't feel comfortable. So I wanted to do it to support them because they supported me. So I did the video, hoped that nobody would watch it, and I would just quietly be able to go back to the garden and listen to the birds. Because all this had a great effect on my head, and I just wasn't quite ready to put myself back out there. So the video was broadcast, and I didn't watch it, and then I got a notification on my phone, and then another notification on all these messages are coming through, and I realized people were going into my shop and buying some of my booklets and my music. And as they were ordering, they were sending me little messages saying, we really loved your video. We will support you. We love what musicians are doing. We'll support you. And then they were asking me some questions. Would you believe they were asking me questions about online things? How do we download? There were people who didn't know how to download stuff asking me when I was totally a dinosaur with all this. And then I realized this was a new audience. This was an audience that really connected with what I, was saying. And they were also very supportive back to me. So this lifted me sort of away from the garden for a while to think, actually, I can still do my third strand in all this, which has developed my books. So I'm doing a project for my new audience. I can't say too much about it yet, but I have started a YouTube channel, which if you had told me that I'd be doing this 2 months ago, I would have said, David, you are joking. I'm not going to be able to do this. So yeah, my poor husband, who thought he was going to have a very quiet time now, has been helping me with all of this. So yeah, it's been exciting, and it's it gave me a new audience to work with.
Incredible, and you've got moving so fast with it as well. And I think, as you say, sort of going from an area where you didn't have much experience at all, and it's sort of almost being your worst nightmare. It's really quite incredible just how fast that you've come online. I sort of did it the opposite way round to you and kind of regretted it. Where in the first, I think it was week, I did a ridiculous amount of content, and then got to the end of that week and was absolutely exhausted, and I had to take the next week sort of away from technology and refuse to write or do anything online because it was just a bit too intense, and I hadn't really kind of worked out I hadn't processed what the world was at that point. And I think, as you say, it's a good chance to do that. So in going online, what are the sort of challenges that you've faced, and how have you then managed to tackle some of these issues?
Well, although I'd got my online audience, I got it before I went online, strangely. I just had that video, and I was just had this audience. And then the teaching started, and we had no choice but to go online. And I literally waited until the very last second to get on Zoom, which is what the RNCM were recommending. And I was quite negative in my approach to start with, because I'd heard all kinds of stories that this wouldn't work. And I was amazed that when I started, I realised I was very comfortable doing this. There are lots of good things about it. I didn't have to travel.
Well, the harp
so that was great.
Good as well.
Yes. And, I like the timetabling of it. I like the waiting room. And it's nice to see people in their houses, and you get to know a little bit more about their personalities depending on the background in the room. So, and also I think the focus is concentration. I'm finding with some of my students is much more sort of online. I also, the way I teach, I try and get my students to think and to really, I don't tell them how to do things. I try and get them to really think. Now, what do you want to get out of this? What is wrong with this? But one of the things that I preach a lot is, listen to yourselves. And I always think that's the last thing we develop as musicians. We're thinking of the notes and the rhythm and the phrasing and memorizing and getting to the end and doing things, and not really listening to the sound that we want. And of course, I wasn't there in the room to hear their actual sound. So I was saying, I think this might be good, but you've really got to listen now, because I can't direct you. And I found that really changed the way they were working. So I can't wait to hear them, live, to see if that is true. I find that teenagers, they're enjoying their practicing more, because they're not having to fit it in between schoolwork. They have got more time to actually go to the harp when they want to, and just think, what do I have to do today? So the feedback from that has been great. I'm in my harp studio in the garden at home in Stockport, and so I had to slightly rearrange the room so that it was easy for me to do my online teaching. So I would definitely recommend that take your time to set up everything, so that it's easy then for every week that you just go to it and it's all go. The downside is for the first few weeks, I could see myself on camera, and there was a permanent smile. Trying to look at it, that was exhausting. So that was trying to relax a little bit more, not perform as much, just trying to be myself. Obviously, the sound issues on Zoom are not brilliant for music making, so it's adapting to that. Then as the weeks progressed, you did see students getting quite tired and overwhelmed with lots of extra stuff that they'd been given from school, some worries coming. And there was one week when I didn't understand why I was feeling quite low. And I think I was looking directly at students and into their eyes and seeing fear, anxiety, what's going to happen. They wanted reassurance from me that things would go back to normal soon. And it's very difficult to say anything. And you don't want to kill the dream and say, yes, we'll be back in September. We hope that we will, but it'll be back in a different way. So it's trying to get them to understand that going back to normal is maybe not what we should be focusing on, but going forward in a different way, and it could be better. It doesn't have to be doom and gloom that we can't do exactly what we did before. So with my senior class at the RNCM, I decided this would be a great opportunity to invite people from across the world to pop in for an hour to speak to the class. And these are people that we probably would never have booked in the past because it would have been too expensive. So that's been fun, to connect and to make the situation as positive as possible.
Definitely. It's incredible sort of just how exhausting at times it can be doing things online, and you have to think creative about how to do it. And as you say about setting up a practice room, I'm amazed that all of a sudden working out where the nearest plug is now a really important part of teaching. And to make sure you're plugged in, and up here I've done a repainting to try and make a studio that I can vaguely walk into at times, and it's amazing to see just how unique this world is. I was reading an article recently, I think it was in a psychology magazine online, and it was saying as to why we're finding Zoom calls so tiring. And it's that there's elements of how we understand and sort of process body language that we can't do online that is something in person. And as a result, our other senses, such as audio and visual, then overcompensate to try and catch up with it, which is potentially why we're all finding it quite hard at times, which is certainly tricky. So you mentioned your students. I think students in general are facing quite an unknown world at the moment. In particular, I feel really sorry for those who are recent graduates because they don't come into the 1 year self-employed support minimum requirements, so they're currently left in limbo land. And also for those students who are not sure what their next turn is. What sort of reaction are you getting from students, if you can say in sort of vague terms, as to their thoughts on the future?
To be honest, I think some of them are still in shock, and they're also trying to complete their courses. So at the moment, it's still trying to make sure they've done everything so that they can graduate. They're now starting to look beyond, and my gentle encouragement is to still carry on as they would before, making sure they have all their websites and Facebook pages up to date, and hope that things will gradually get back to normal. But to look what other skills they have too. I think we have to be realistic. They will need, as we all have to do, to earn a living. So if they had other skills they were good at, now maybe was the time to make sure they were in place, to have a plan B. So I have one student who's absolutely brilliant with origami. Okay, so bear with me.
Wow, so wasn't quite expecting that.
So she made my wedding bouquet, whole origami, flowers and everything. It was absolutely brilliant. So she'd never done one before. So I told her, why don't you start developing this side of your business? Because people will be getting married again. That'll be something different. So she started making cards, origami decorations and wall hangings. And that has kept her in, maybe a few sandwiches and a few beers during the past few weeks. And it's just thinking of things like that might help you through. But I think, freelance musicians, I know a lot of my colleagues are trying to find other skills that they have. I know a friend who is amazing at baking cakes. So she's got a little sideline of making cakes for birthdays and then, leaving the cakes on the doorstep, but it's just something to keep the money coming in. And of course, as you mentioned, I think being self-employed, being a freelancer, for me, it was a choice. I've always done things the wrong way around. I left a job to become freelance. So I was principal harp with Northern Ballet Theatre for many, many years. Really enjoyed it, but I've always wanted freedom. So I left to freelance. It's always been a precarious career. You don't always know if you're going to be booked. Again, you could do a great job with an orchestra for 15 years, and then suddenly there's a new principal or there's a new conductor or a new fixer, and there's somebody else. So I've always tried to diversify, as I said earlier. So we've always lived a little bit on the edge, and this is a huge shock to us now that we didn't get much government support. I think a musicians union said recently that something like 39% of people fall between the cracks of getting the government support, and that is such a shame for the country that, you know, the arts are being so poorly supported. This was happening before this pandemic with music in schools. You know, the funding for music in schools being cut, and now this, and it's crazy because we see so many things happening online that wouldn't happen now to keep us all going if it wasn't for music and the creative arts and drama and everything. And I just really hope that freelancers can, you know, hang in there, and we will get, you know, more support. And you know, we've got to think of the next generation as well. What are they going to do? As you say, the young people who have trained for a long time and are really passionate. There's none of us go into this, you know, for the money either. We need the money, but I didn't leave school and go, oh, I want to be really, really rich, I'll be a musician. You know, we did it. We did it because we love the music. So, but we need something back. And the other thing is, you know, I've been thinking, you know, why are we doing this? We're doing it because we love sharing music with people. We love collaborating. We love sharing with audiences, and we've lost that. So there was a bit of a grief period when, you know, not being able to see my colleagues and not being able to get the applause or meet your audience. I think that's had a profound effect on some people, and suddenly being very isolated from the reason that we became musicians in the first place, was to connect. And online is great, but it's not the same.
Very true. It's you don't necessarily get that sort of tactile face-to-face elements of meeting your audience in the same level of connection at times. Although there's ways of doing it, it's certainly tricky. It's really interesting to hear about hearing your experience of being a freelancer, and I know that sort of over the last 100 years, having full-time employment as a musician has been the norm, but prior to that, it was never really the case. Do you think we're going to start moving away from having proper full-time salary jobs with pensions and things in the music world, and potentially go back to multi-stream income, having multiple hats? Thinking of Mozart, who was a composer, teacher, conductor, performer, viola player, even trying anything to get money. In my head, I think it's potentially we'll be moving back to more of a freelance or multi-income stream with things that may or may not be musical included. Do you have any thoughts as to how it's going to be going forward for freelancers? With a crystal ball, obviously.
I think you've made a very good point. I talk from the harpist point of view here, but a harp job in an orchestra, a few years ago, it would be the first, if somebody retired as a harpist, it wasn't necessarily seen that job would still be open. So there were already cuts in orchestras with people going on either first call contracts or a percentage. So that's already started happening, I think. And yeah, I hope that it won't happen. But if it does happen, musicians are resilient, and we work hard, and we're very determined, and we're very passionate. And I think we will get through this. And I know it's very easy for me to say that, sitting here saying, I've got a new audience and I've got my online teaching. And I know that not everybody can do that because they have childcare issues at home, they have to homeschool at the moment. But beyond that, I think there will be a way for us to move forward, embrace the digital world, embrace the fact that, you can have a photography business on the side and still do your music. And I think that can be very healthy, which is why I've always enjoyed the three strands in my working life. I think it's, if I'd had got a full-time orchestral job, I don't know if it would have fulfilled me as much, because all these strands keep me fresh, keep me engaged, keep me going in different directions. So it can be a positive thing if that does happen.
I certainly think so, and I think musicians really do find that creative side of doing multiple things really beneficial, whether it's something musical or something that's a passion outside of music. And it's very rare to find a musician who just does one very specific thing and that's it for both artistically and professionally as well. So I think it could only be potentially a positive for the wider world as well. And if it's something that helps support you then do your artistic projects, then why wouldn't you want to do it?
And yeah, exactly. And I know some amazing musicians in orchestras who are fantastic cooks, and maybe if they had more time to develop their careers, they would enjoy their music even more. So yeah, I think it can be a very healthy thing to look at.
Just suddenly thinking, Stephen Huff could be a perfect example of this. He's not only a pianist and a composer, but he's also an artist and a writer as well, and probably 10, 15 other things he doesn't tell people about. I saw him at a festival, Hertfordshire Festival of Music, and he had his residency there was to showcase all of his different artistic outputs. So he had a gallery hanging a talk about his recent book, his commissions and compositions were being premiered, and then also he did some performing as well as a pianist. So we do have people who are already almost showcasing what this could look like, which is, a unique thing. So I think we're just going to go back a little bit in the conversation. I think you may have done yourself a disservice in saying how fast you've managed to get it online and what you've managed to do. So what are the actual things that you're offering online, and how did you manage to get them to be physically online as well? Thinking in terms of your teaching, your books, your music, etc.
Yeah, just a lot of hard work, but just obviously Zoom. I had to do RNCM online teaching, and then offering that to private students. Then I posted on social media that I was doing this, and other people who had wanted to maybe have lessons with me before, but they were too far away or they were in a different country, then contacted me. So that was an area that opened up. Last week I did a masterclass in the USA, which was incredible, at the part of the Eastman Community School project. Next month I'm being asked to do a masterclass in Tennessee. This would never have happened if I hadn't posted something on social media to say I was now teaching online. So that was, I think, promoting yourself is very important. It's very tiring, of course, but musicians aren't great always to say, look at me, I'm doing this. But, if you want to eat, you want to pay the bills, you have to market yourself. And you have to say, I have got this product. So I try to put my business hat on and not be afraid of saying, I have a book to sell. And this is it. I found it quite difficult at first. And also knowing where to post, knowing how often to post the information so people wouldn't get fed up of me doing it. So it's trial and error, really. And you'll always find somebody who will, support you. And my books go for £5. So getting the price right was very important as well. Making the booklets downloadable was important. And getting, your friends to support you by sharing the information. So that's all I did, really. And with a YouTube channel for this new audience, I kind of wanted to introduce myself properly, because Strand 1 has probably gone for a while. So I thought, well, Strand 3, I now have time to develop some of my talks and some of my workshop ideas, or introducing what I would do in a workshop and giving people an idea, if they want to book me, that this is the kind of thing that I would do. And I'd never had time to do this before. So yes, I'm looking forward to it. It's there's a real buzz about it at the moment, and yeah.
Certainly.
So that's all I did. I'm just doing it bit by bit, Googling what I need, hoping for the best, getting it wrong sometimes, not worrying what people think too much. Because as you've said in some of your interviews, people are very supportive and we're all trying our best. And I'm not trying to offend anybody or taking money away from anybody, taking work away from anybody else. I'm just developing what I've been doing for the past few years and just see what happens. So come back in a year's time and see what's going on. You'll have to revisit us all.
Exactly. We need to do catch-ups and check-ins at some point to see how things are developed. I think it's great to hear you say as well that trying things and getting stuff wrong. And I know that when I was a musician, I was almost quite terrified of getting things wrong or wouldn't perform things until I knew they were as close to 100% perfect. And it's something I've then continued into the business world that isn't always necessarily a positive thing. So I know that for me during this time, something I've held on is the quote, perfect is the enemy of good. And that if you've been striving for perfection, it means you never actually get going to do something. So making sure that I put stuff out that's good. If it's not perfect, it's not the end of the world. It's just getting going and getting through the process. These live streams and also the blogs are probably quite a good example of that, as there's 101 typos and random mistakes, etc. So it's, making the mistakes and trying and experimenting. So it's great to see that you're doing that as well.
Yeah, and, when I did that video for Edinburgh Harp Festival, I didn't know how to edit. I still don't know how to edit videos. I haven't quite, I know it's simple. It's just one other thing I've got to learn to do. But I did it in one take, 30 minutes in one take, because I didn't want to waste any more time trying to make it look special. And my husband looked at it and said that it's real. It's what you do. And maybe you sometimes confuse your words and talk too fast, but that's who you are and your enthusiasm comes through. And he reminds me of that all the time. Just be you, be real. I'm not perfect. The lighting could be better, the audio could be better, but what I'm trying to say, it hopefully is okay. So just go for it.
Very much so. And as you say, there's always a next level. One of my mini hobbies is photography, and it's then something I've then managed to build into stuff that I do, hence the camera and all sorts. And it's a similar thing where there's always a next step of gear that you can buy, and I'm always going, I could buy this next thing, and as soon as I have it, there's another now level of sort of infinite improving, which you don't necessarily need to do. It's interesting to see sort of striving for these levels. So one thing that's happening this week that you wonderfully reminded me of before we started talking is that it's Mental Health Awareness Week, which I think is particularly prevalent at the moment as musicians do have additional struggles with mental health. I know I've also had my own, but especially when I was studying and post-graduating as well. But during this time that we also have a lot more going on. You have a lot of students, obviously, that you look after at the moment. Do you feel that in general, as a sector, we're currently doing well at looking after our mental health in the sector, or is it something that we can potentially work on during this crisis?
I think there's a very long way to go with it. At the RMCM, last year I think they appointed a health and wellbeing lecturer. So this was in January 2019, which is fantastic, obviously. And there've been various blogs and various information that the students can access to help. There have been counselling sessions at various educational institutions for years. But I've been teaching for 25 years, and it's only now we're having a musician really looking after our well-being. And I could have definitely have benefited from that 20 years ago. So I feel we are quite behind. It was very interesting because last week on my private Facebook page, every week I post my week in photos. I do the end of week 7, end of week 8, and so I take photographs to remind me what I did in week 7 of lockdown. I got to week 8 and I looked at my photographs and thought, I didn't have a good week. I didn't do anything, and it wasn't. And I thought, it wasn't a great week. So I just said it wasn't a great week. And I was aware that, I had some friends and colleagues who were really struggling. So I said, look, if you're struggling, please help. Help a friend. talked to friends, and yeah, a few people sort of said, yes, I sort of agree with this. We should all make sure that we talk. And then I got private messages. I mean, I lost count of how many private messages I got from, interestingly enough, freelance musicians saying, thank you so much for posting that. I am really struggling at the minute, but I don't want to admit it. I didn't want to write anything publicly because I feel I have to be strong, and I won't be booked again if somebody thinks I'm depressed or stressed out. And I thought that was quite heartbreaking in a way, that in this industry, we can't say, I am struggling. And so then a funny thing happened with me. Somebody emailed asking for a reference, and at the end said, so how are you doing? Hope everything's great. How are you doing? And I responded and said, yes, I'll write the reference. I'm not actually doing so great this week, but just said that. Immediately thought, oh, why did I say it? I don't know this person very well. Why did I say that? But I'm so glad I did, because she responded with, yeah, I know, I'm feeling terrible. Yesterday I had a dreadful day. I was in bed all day, but I'm feeling much better today. So, Eira, there will be highs and lows. So just telling somebody I was having an off day lifted me so much. So I know that there are counselling services around, but some are quite difficult to access at times. So I think as a community, we need to look after our friends, our colleagues, and if somebody does post something on Facebook and say, I'm not having a great day, I hope that I would be able to call them or send them a message saying, do you want to talk? I understand, I'm here if you want to catch up. And, I just would encourage everybody to do that.
Very much so. One thing that I think has been very refreshing to see during this period, that people are being more vocal with how they currently are as well, and also then again reaching out to support each other, which is a nice positive. And I know that for me during this time, I've certainly had struggles and better weeks in various elements, and last week I potentially could have fallen out with my own shadow at various points. It was sort of that sort of week of, there was no reason to, but still just there's one, the work side of things, and two, the existential elements of what the world is during coronavirus and etc. And it's a lot for us to take on as human beings, and being open and aware and almost giving yourself the acceptance and permission to have days where you're not feeling as good, I found to be particularly beneficial. And again, if you're listening, I know that both the Musicians Union and the Incorporated Society of Musicians have resources for mental health and hotlines as well that are still running during this period, as well as various other bits of support. But I think it's, as you say, it's in the past there's been this element of that you can't admit that things are going badly, especially as a freelancer, because it then impacts your working life afterwards. And it's potentially really useful going forwards that we continue this conversation and potentially better practice of approaching our mental health into the future. That'll be my hope anyway, I think.
No, I totally agree with you.
Certainly. So before we wrap up, I'm really interested to know sort of what are your, potentially this could lead into our catch-up in a year's time. What are your goals going forward, if you have any, or what you're wanting to sort of try and do by the end of lockdown with your various online projects? Or is it more that you're just finding your way and it's more of an organic journey through?
Yeah, it's developing some ideas I've always had, but had never had time to do. So I've got some compositions that have been in my head for a very long time. So I'm writing some tunes as we speak. I have 3 new pieces on the music stand. I'm always one of those people, during a break of a orchestral rehearsal, I'm sort of twiddling with a few ideas, and I write down a few sketches, a few bars, and then I don't do anything about it because I haven't got time. So I brought my sketchbook out and started to see what I've done in the past, and that's given me a lot of joy. So I hope it would give other people joy as well. So I've got a set of pieces called Songs of Hope, which I'm hoping to publish, and do more of that writing. Just more workshop ideas, and seeing what happens with the YouTube channel, supporting young musicians. I hope that I can continue that in a different way, not just through my teaching, but as young musicians come into the profession, be able to share my experiences over many years of doing it myself. So very open to hearing from anybody. This is just a chat. I just get a big buzz out of helping people. So I'd like to develop that side. And just hoping I will still be in this studio in a year's time, still being positive, that I have played in front of an audience again. So yeah, just seeing what happens really. As you say, I can't predict the future, but trying to be positive, but accepting when it's not a great day. So if I can just do that and keep going, getting up every day and trying my best, that's what I'm aiming to do.
Perfect advice, I think, for this moment as well. And yeah, focusing on the things that you can control, which is always important during crises anyway. And just as a final note, actually, you mentioned obviously chamber music earlier on in the conversation, and obviously one of the first things that will be coming back are chamber music concerts. I know harp repertoire so very badly, but a long time ago I did an orchestra tour in France, and we had a night of playing chamber music and drinking wine, and did some cello and harp duets that were, I think, Bantok. There's some absolutely stunning music.
Oh,
really, really enjoyed it.
Yes.
So if
I
you
agree.
don't know,
oh, definitely.
Yeah, it's definitely one of my failings for not knowing as much repertoire as possible, but there's some fantastic chamber music out there. So I think, yeah, it's something that's always stayed with me, of being stuck up a mountain in France somewhere, drinking lots of wine and playing cello and harp duets. Well,
I can send you a listening list if you want.
Oh, certainly. Bring it on. The more the merrier. I've definitely got the time to do it now, which is a bonus for this period. So one thing I always like to finish on is, what have you seen during lockdown that has really made you smile, either on a musical level or just, say, like a silly dog video or something like that? Mine are usually dog videos.
Well, there were two things. There was a very beautiful video of 15 harpists across the world playing, I think it was a Scottish tune, and it was at the beginning of lockdown, and you saw them in their own homes playing a lever harp, pedal harp, triple harp, Chinese harp, single action harp, wire strung harp, and they all just came together and played this really amazing piece of music, and that soothed me, and that was so amazing. Especially the Breton harpist Tristan Legovich, who filmed his video outside with the chickens, and that made me smile. He was playing with the chickens. I love that. And then the second one was just lifted my spirits because it was so unexpected. And this was the weather presenter, Owain Wyn Evans. He's a weather presenter for BBC Northwest, and he finished his forecast, and the theme tune started, and he ran inside and accompanied by playing on the drums. Have you seen this?
Yes, I also know the weather presenter, because he used to be the one for BBC Look North in Yorkshire, then went the wrong side of the Pennines. Okay. So I'm only just coming back to accepting it.
It was so unexpected. You didn't think that was going to happen, and he did it with such conviction as well, and really made me smile. And it also reminded me of how important music making in Wales, because he is Welsh, is to me. And I thought of my nephews. One of them does play the drums, the other one, bass guitar. They're football and rugby mad, but music is such an important part of their lives. And it just reminded me of my upbringing in Wales, and how you can be anything you want in life, but music will always be there. You don't have to just be a musician. Music is an important part. So having a weather presenter suddenly saying, I love music too, I don't know, it just made me smile. And whenever I see the clip, because it's everywhere, it still makes me smile. I just think it's fantastic. So well done, Owain.
Wonderful. I think it's such a fantastic positive note to end on. And if you haven't seen it, it is the most incredibly positive, chirpy, unexpected video. I can't recommend it highly enough. So thank you so much, Eira. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. If people are watching and listening and want to find you in the world of the internet, see either some of your music, your teaching, your recordings, your books, where can they find you online?
Just on my website, eiralynjones.com, and shortly on YouTube.
Fantastic. Well, I'll also put all the links and things in descriptions on wherever you're watching this, and also if you're listening back to the podcast. If you need any information on what we've gone through today, or to look at any of the other podcasts or blogs, etc., they're all on my website, which is david-taylor.org. Do check them out if they're of interest, and also thank you again so much for watching and listening. It really is great to connect you all, and I hope you're all keeping well during this time. So the next guests for Wednesday and Friday aren't announced just yet, but they're really exciting, so looking forward to those. And again, Eira, thank you so much for being here. It's an absolute pleasure. And fingers crossed it won't take another pandemic till we talk next time. Pleasure. And thank you again for listening. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.